Hey, this is Mark Ramsey, co host of It Doesn't Take a Genius. You're listening to part two of our podcast episode about storytelling. In the first part, we discussed why stories are so important. This episode will focus on how to tell your story. We just want to take a moment to say that we appreciate the kind feedback we've received and hope the podcast continues to help you learn something that you can apply. And now it's time for the announcer.
In a world filled with uncertainty, two semi-intelligent, somewhat interesting, Midwestern, family guy, business coaches with dad bods, provide mildly insightful ideas through their semi-focused dialogue. Welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius.
So people want to know what the early days were like. What was the struggle in the beginning? And we know so many of them. You know, we know Sam Walton's story. We know Apple's story. We know the Starbucks story. You know, there's just countless examples. The Southwest Airlines and the napkin. You know, a triangle with three cities on it. And let's start an airline.
Yeah.
What?
Ray Kroc and seeing the McDonald's set up with the selling the milkshake machines and then realizing, hold on, these guys are onto something.
Yeah, this could be big. So the founder story, I think, is one of the keys to do this, and it's there again, people will resonate with it. It will strike a chord with them. It's always inspirational, and there's a story arc. There's a journey to this thing.
Yeah.
So let's think about, all right, so how do you tell a story? Right? I've noticed in the world that some people can't tell a story.
That's right.
And you know these people, and when they come up to you to tell you a story, your brain kind of panics a little. All right, because you know it's going to start someplace towards the middle. There's going to be information that's irrelevant, and then it may or may not end in a place that makes sense.
Right.
You know, but other than that, they expect you to go with them on this journey that they're about to verbally take you upon.
I think there are, if we're going to talk in large buckets here, there's the capture bucket and the share bucket. You got to start with the capture bucket. What are the elements of the story? Some people don't know the story until it's reflected back to them. They really have to think about it to process, like you did with your car dealer about, the fact that, 75th, 74th, which anniversary is it? Well, that's a fascinating story. So for some clients, having to tell that story and have it reflected back to them is a part of it. And you do have to think narrative. You have to think, I think you've pointed out to me in the past, every Pixar movie is a master class in how to do this, right? There's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end. There's a hero's journey that happens here.
Yeah, everything is going along fine. Here's my everyday life. And this happens.
Yeah.
And then this happens. The hero has to take some sort of action. And then it wraps up with, and this is how the hero comes out the other side. And going back to your point about meaning, here's what they've learned along the way. And so there has to be some sort of transformation of the character, whether it's a rat that cooks, right, or if it's a washed up superhero. They all come out the other side having learned something very important. And Pixar has figured out those stories are worth billions of dollars.
That's right. That's exactly right. And, George Lucas was another one that said, oh, there's sort of an archetype here. There's a template you can follow, reading Campbell and sort of applying that to the cinema world. But that's what Luke Skywalker is, right? That's what Anakin Skywalker is, really, when you look at the entire original trilogy. He says it's really the story of the salvation of Darth Vader. So so thinking that through, and you don't have to spell all of it out to people, but that there's some meaning there, a change that happens. What have we learned along the way is a big part of that. And now you got the real challenge, which is condensing that story you captured into something useful I know you like talking about songwriters right now, and I'll throw in the man who brought Goldilocks and the story of the three bears to the printed page. Robert Southey, the poet, said, "It is with words as with sunbeams. The more they are condensed, the deeper they burn." You look at the James Taylors of the world and see that in action, right?
Oh yeah, the James Taylors. We're gonna date myself here. The Jim Croce's of the world. I'll go a little more modern. Taylor Swift's "Our Song." Taylor Swift does a nice job of documenting in a very short, tight, compact package her latest failed relationship. And so, but it's done in this narrow format. You have to tell a story, take people on a journey, and
Yeah.
you have a limited number of words and a limited amount of time. The songs are 3 minutes or less. So in 3 minutes or less, can I tell you a story, take you on a journey, and kind of like Bobby Jorgensen was talking about, can I make you feel something?
Yeah, you're empathizing with the situation.
Yeah, I feel it, and if I feel it, then I'm going to listen to the song again. Then I'm going to download the song, and then I'm going to share the song with somebody. And so, the ability to tell a nice, concise story becomes critical, especially today when most people have the attention span of a gnat on crack. So, and you look at these social media platforms like TikTok. If something doesn't happen in the first 2 or 3 seconds, if you can't tell an entire story in 15 seconds, that's gone, right? You don't get credit for that view because nobody stayed for the full 15 seconds for your video.
Right.
What the heck?
And you're not going to get the nuance of meaning that you can tease out of the Odyssey compared to a TikTok video. And that is current reality. And I will not say more about that. That's just sort of, that's the world we live in right now.
Yeah,
but,
you look at the time stamp on a TED Talk. It's 18 minutes,
right?
And that's their time limit. And you'll see a few that go over where they gave the speaker a little leeway.
Yeah.
But if you can't, even if it's a brand new idea and the world has never even heard of it before, if you can't explain it in 18 minutes or less, you haven't thought your idea through well enough to explain it. And so you have to go back and do more thinking so that you can explain your idea, no matter how revolutionary, and maybe people don't have anything to connect it to. And yet you got to do it in under 18 minutes, or their belief is you haven't thought it through well enough.
And you and I have both experienced this. I know we've talked about it, where we've presented to a client and we've given them charts, statistics, amazing facts, bullet points. And then what they tell us after it's over is, wow, that was a great story that you mentioned, that you sprinkled in there to illustrate your point. The story is what they remember, the image of that story. That's why make me feel like I was there is so important here, because you've got to make somebody resonate with enough of the story, have that resonance, that it actually is something that sticks. And it won't be the statistics. It'll be the why, the meaning, the point behind it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've never had anybody come up to me and go, your third bullet point is incredible. Your third bullet point moved me.
Right.
That has never happened, right? And 40 years of telling stories, no one's ever done that.
All right. So how do you share a story like that? Once you've captured it, how do you go about bringing that to the public that you're trying to resonate with?
Well, I think it has to be on everything. You look at every customer touch point. Does every customer touch point, the look, the feel, does it reinforce the story? And my favorite example is the restaurant Tom and Chi. They had an incredible story. Right? They started in a tent near an ice skating rink in Cincinnati, and then they got a building, and then they got 2 buildings, and then they went on Shark Tank, and then it got bigger. All this, the entire story, the timeline, is on every single cup and every single drink they sell. And so you're drinking your cool beverage, and on there it's got the timeline. Here's our founder story. Here's how this started. and so you can get engaged with it. Truthfully, food's not that good. You know, and it may not make it, but I think it got as far as it did because they were so good at telling
Yeah.
the story, despite the fact that the product was limited and just okay.
Well, you had told me an example of this with a client of yours who had a chance to be the heir of a business by being an in-law. And what was fascinating about I mean, you can tell the story, but what was fascinating about it was what happened when he actually chose to intentionally share it. So use that as a launching point.
Yeah. So yeah, I've got this store owner, and he wasn't always a store owner. He had done some other work. He'd married this wonderful woman whose father owned a chain of tire stores. And so he immediately, smart guy, they plugged him into the tire stores, and they saw him as, this is our next coming. This is the heir apparent to the empire of the tire stores. He's making great money. He's got a path. The wife's family's happy. The wife is happy. Everybody's happy, and he's miserable.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to be the tire guy. He wants to be a car guy. He wants to be in the automotive retail business. And so he musters up the courage to quit. So he has to tell the father-in-law and he has to tell the wife that he doesn't want to be the tire guy. He's going to quit, and he's going to go start at the very bottom of automotive retail. He's going to go sell cars, and work his way up and see if he can ultimately own a store. And so he goes out, he gets a job, he sells cars, he's manager, he's a general manager. And then finally the store owner where he works comes to him and says, wow, you're awesome. Go find a store and I'll back you. Wow. And so he goes out and he finds this little store, and he moves his whole family to this little town, and it makes a go of this store. And that's when I met him, when it was just starting to take off. And I asked the same question: who have you told this story to? And he goes, I don't tell anybody that story. I said, you have to tell everybody that story. Every frustrated entrepreneur in America wants to hear your story. Every successful entrepreneur in America wants to hear your story. I said, you're the Lester Burnham of success in America. And he says, really? He says, is it that interesting? I said, just try it. And so, being new in town, he got invited to the Chamber of Commerce. And so the Chamber of Commerce, he was the featured, business at the Chamber of Commerce. He says, what should I talk about? I said, you don't talk about anything. Just tell the story.
Just tell the story.
So he tells the story, and he says, unbelievable. He said he was mobbed afterwards. People surrounding him, that was a great story. I love how you got here. What can I do to help you? The story was so compelling and had such meaning and resonated with everybody that he said people were banks were saying, you can put a few cars in front of my bank. You can put a few cars in front of my store. If you want to do, something, we'll work with you and help promote your business in our business. And he said it was just, the response was just overwhelming, that people connected with his story and then ultimately wanted to help him be more successful.
So what I love about that is that he intentionally chose to share the story. And now we're circling all the way back around to what we started talking about, which is, why would you do that? Yeah. The story had so much resonance and meaning to it that people wanted to be a part of it. And that's why storytelling in your onboarding of new hires, as well as with customers, is such a huge deal, that, you're telling people, hey, here's something that you can be a part of. Right? This is something bigger than yourself. It's something that's important. It has impact on the world, or what have you. And you can write the next chapter with us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You think about a new hire, they go their first day, they sign all the HR forms or whatever, and there's all this administrative stuff. And at some point they're going to go home, and everybody in their life is going to go, how was your first day?
Right.
And they're going to either have, one of two stories, right? It was, they put me in this room, I read the policy manual and the employee handbook, and then I signed some HR forms, and then they walked me around and introduced me to somebody. Or if somebody shared with them the story, the founder story of the business, then they have a story that they can tell. Yeah, hey, did you know this place was started back in World War II, and they
Yeah.
didn't even have a car the first year when they went into business, and so they
Yeah.
persevered through that. It's really a neat place.
And what they're saying is, here's what I'm a part of now.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
I'm in on this.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I am right. I'm helping to write the next chapter in this story.
Love it.
Right, the great play goes on, and you may contribute a verse.
Love it.
So now they've brought me into the great play, and now I have a small role, but I can contribute to the overall play.
Love it so much. Well, there's a book about this.
There is. I just happen to have it handy.
Do you?
I'll be very discreet. Yeah. Yeah, I hope that was subtle enough.
Nice.
And keep in mind, we make no money when this book sells. This was just a book that Mark and I had read.
Just a solid book.
Yeah, and everything that we've talked about is in here. And of course,
Storyteller's Secret.
yeah, in a much more detailed fashion and a much more coherent fashion, and brought to you by more intelligent people. So, yeah, we're not all that bright, but we can read. So
That's right.
there's that. So yeah, highly recommend.
How do you pronounce the author's name? Is it Carmine?
Carmine
Gallo?
Carmine Gallo. Yeah, I believe is how he pronounces it.
Okay.
So yeah, just a lovely book, very hands-on, practical tips on what stories are needed for you personally, whether you don't have to be a business owner, you're just an individual who wants to tell a story because you need to work with people, or if you're a department manager, or you're somebody running a multi-international corporation.
Yes.
This all applies.
Love it. Well, one final thought for me before we wrap this up, and then I want to turn it over to you for any final thoughts from you. But just the importance of that last bit you said about, and you may contribute a verse. The story is not over. So for anybody who's listening to this and trying to process what's going on for their company or for themselves, maybe you're unemployed right now and you're in the job market, or maybe your company is going through something right now. There is a story up to this point, and the story is not over. And the reason I think that's important is that you really are allowing the story to help drive the meaning. So this is helping with your mindset. It's helping with allowing others to contribute to the next part of the story, and never see the story as the end, because it's not the end yet. And it's important to keep that mindset just for you personally, let alone for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Final thoughts from you?
Well, just one of the things we learned from Sean Acor was that if you want to get excited about what you do, go tell somebody the story. And so in the process of telling the story of your business and what you do and how it does it, and why you do it, you become re-energized.
Yeah.
And so it reminds you of, oh yeah, that's why I do this. And know that you're exactly right. There's your COVID story right now. What did your business do before, during, and after the great pandemic of 2020?
Yeah.
And there's wonderful small stories within that of success and people helping each other, and business adapting and innovative and things like that. So it's all there. We just got to make sure that we tell the stories.
Could you go back and share that to mid-20s Mark Ramsey, who I just, I'm unpacking and I found my journals, and there was a lot of wrestling I was doing, thinking, I don't have a career path. I don't have, a prospective future wife. I don't know what's going on here. I literally found an entry where I did pros and cons on, should I go out on my own and do consulting and coaching? Took years to get there, and I couldn't see a way forward. But obviously that was part of the narrative back then. It didn't come to fruition until today. Same thing with my wife. I met her 4 years before we actually started dating, and we both said, nah. And I have that captured in my journals that I said, beautiful girl, but no connection. So moving on. Was that a smart thing? I don't know. I don't have a girlfriend right now. And 4 years later, we start dating and get married a year to the day after we start dating. So these stories, they're not done yet. They're just not done yet.
Oh, no. Yeah. The entry in the journal you make today, you have no idea how it's going to play out in the future. But the fact that you have that journal entry and then it allows you to put the whole story together down to the date.
Literally to the day I did it.
Tell you to the day this happened 4 years ago, 5 years. Yeah, I think that makes the story even richer. And at some point at your 50th wedding anniversary, they're going to put a slide up, or by then they'll project it into our brain. So they'll project an image into our brain, and it'll be a photo of that journal entry when you went, yeah, met her. I don't think so.
Meh.
Yeah, meh. So, and then that'll become part of your wonderful story.
Yeah.
So here's the kids, the grandkids, but let me tell you the founder's story. Didn't start off all that cool, kids. Most of you weren't going to be here had I stuck with my original thought.
Right. Oh, lovely. All right. So we should probably listen to a certain announcer who will not be named, John Wolf, and let him take us out, right?
Let's wrap this up.
Let's do it.
And that, I guess, is that. It doesn't take a genius. No rights reserved, nothing trademarked, copyrighted, or even original. Feel free to give it to anyone, anytime, using any and all media formats. Warning, Mark and Mike may or may not make another one. I'm your announcer, and I did not get paid a nickel to do this. They won't even let me tell you my name. So until next time, if there is a next time, stay safe. Be well.
That's good enough.